here I have the first thing is your relative Colonel William Crawford.
Yes, Colonel Crawford had a tragic end. He was burned at the stake by the Indians in Upper Sandusky, Ohio in the 1700s. And that started the family interest in the Faox history. And then he was followed by one of the first Faoxes that moved to Sydney and built a log cabin on a creek outside of Sydney. And my dad was born there, and eventually then the family moved to South Whitley, and he went to high school there and played in the Agony band and became very attached to the community.
Okay, then after the Agony band, if I remember correctly, he went on to play in an orchestra in Fort Wayne.
That's correct. Emil Verweer was the conductor of a Fort Wayne community band, and he was a bassoon player. And he had difficulty playing the bassoon and conducting the band. And my dad was playing saxophone in the Agony band, and Verweer contacted him and asked him if he could learn to play bassoon in the Fort Wayne band, which he did. And he seemed to be quite promising at playing the bassoon, so they arranged for him to study with the second bassoon player in the Chicago Symphony. Eventually he got good enough that the second player said he should study with the first chair player, and that launched his career.
It's kind of interesting that, I don't know those of you who don't realize it, but Hugo came back and started Faox Products, and Alan ran it for 52 years, and that one incident right there was the trigger of the future for the Faox family. You told me a story about Fred Faox and the Beehive grocery store.
Yes, Fred Faox was an interesting character unto himself. He went to Purdue. Now, unfortunately, he didn't go to Purdue to study. And my grandfather went looking for him because he hadn't communicated anything from Purdue. And when my grandfather got to Lafayette, he found that Fred was partying in all of the activities and working on the Monon Railroad. And my grandfather brought him back to South Whitley, opened him up in a cigar store, and the cigar store ultimately failed, and he took over the management, or participated in the management, of the Beehive grocery store. And my connection with that was the fact that they had a Model A truck that they delivered groceries with, and Dick Enos drove that truck, and I was 4 or 5 years old. This is 1939 or 1940, and Dick let me sit on his lap and hold on to the steering wheel, and I thought I was driving the truck, and we drove and delivered groceries around South Whitley at that time.
Okay. What building in downtown South Whitley was the Beehive grocery store in?
Oh,
the laundromat.
Laundromat.
Yeah, the laundromat.
Yeah.
Okay. Your father ends up on the Chicago Symphony Orchestra,
Right.
and he has a son named Alan while he's there.
Yes.
So you want to talk a little bit about growing up in Chicago?
Yes, well, it was interesting to the extent that the children of the members of the Chicago Symphony had chairs in Orchestra Hall, and whenever someone prominent from the symphony world would perform in Chicago, we were all invited to come in and listen to whoever it was. And I was more or less commanded to come in to listen because at that age I hated classical music. And I was bound and determined that I was going to get away from the music world. So Chicago had a technical high school called Lane Tech, and I was registered as to be a future member of that high school. But Dad left the symphony in 1949, and we moved to South Whitley. So I never attended that high school. But I did spend my junior and senior years in South Whitley High School. And during that time, I won the state chemistry contest. And that sealed my fate. So I ended up studying chemical engineering at Purdue.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Yeah, Alan, I looked on the plots of Cleveland Township from 1914, and this property was with Mary Fox. Would that be right?
That was my grandmother.
Okay, and they came here in what year, and what were they doing in 1913 here?
Well, she bought the property in 1905, I think.
Okay,
And this was a golf course for a period of 5 or 10 years.
Mm.
And eventually they converted it to a farm, and my grandfather raised sheep on it. And later on, I raised sheep on it.
Mm.
And by the time I got it, the fences were in terrible shape, and the sheep had a way of getting out of the fences. And I became very familiar with Highway 105 as I chased sheep up and down that period. But anyway, it was a good experience. And later on, I made hay and helped with baling and that type of farm work. So I've had a taste of farm work.
okay. So you were living in Chicago, and would you come here in the summer and stay?
Yeah, we spent almost every summer here. One problem we had was that the Chicago school system's vacations did not coincide with the Chicago Symphony vacations. So there were very few weeks when Dad and I both had free time. So we sort of went back and forth.
Did you drive or take the train to Chicago?
We drove,
You drove.
yeah. Later on, when I was in high school, before I became in high school here, I used to take the train. And we took the nickel plate coming back coming to South Whitley, and then Pennsylvania going in from Fort Warsaw to
Um,
Chicago.
Yeah, when you were in Chicago and Lane Tech, did you live downtown, like close to the Michigan Avenue and the bridge, the river in
No,
Chicago?
we lived farther north, about 6400 north, which was Devon Avenue, if you're familiar with Chicago. And I went to Senn High School, which was about 3 or 4 miles from Wrigley Field.
Okay.
I've been a dyed-in-the-wool Cub fan ever since.